In today's episode, we're diving deep into the gritty realities of Chicago's gang culture, focusing on the notorious Shield's Gangster Disciples set, their rivalries, and the violent episodes that have shaped their history. From the streets of Englewood to the ongoing feuds with Taytown and other rival gangs, the stories we're covering highlight the tragic consequences of gang violence in the city. We'll explore the origins and evolution of Shields, delve into the murder of Taytown's Tayskii, and examine the shocking cases that have left a lasting impact on the community. These stories aren't just about the violence, they're about the lives lost, the families affected, and the relentless cycle that continues to grip Chicago's neighborhoods.
Got it for the city, but they sleeping on shit we did, they chasing cloud, I keep it on me. Swear to God, I'ma wake them up. 2 clips I ever clutch, I'm steady popping 30s.
How you coming, shorty?
Flow like any minute, mighty mo, you feel me?
Hold on the floor like
Yeah, that shit on the flow, ain't no mo here with us, you know what I'm saying?
Structure in the street, so we let heat blow. We call destruction when it's beef, so we gon' keep scoring. These I'm blowing up just like C4. I'm turned up, ain't turning down.
As we get into the gritty streets of Englewood, Chicago, where the Shields Gangster Disciples set holds down their territory on 57th and Shields. This block has a storied history, once controlled by the Micky Cobras before the rise of the Gangster Disciples. While some gangs claim territory they don't actually occupy, Shields is a different story. They're firmly rooted on 57th and Shields, and they're a force to be reckoned with. Shields isn't your typical set, it's about 90% Gangster Disciples with a small presence of Micky Cobras. The gang traces its origins back to the Row Boys, named after the row houses on 57th and Normal. They were once clicked up with another local set called Dodge City. But as the years passed and Dodge City faded away in the 2010s, the Micky Cobras flipped to Shields, merging their territory with the Row Boys to form what we know today as Shields. When it comes to beefs, Shields is in the middle of a heated war. Their primary rivals are Taytown and Lamron. Shields was allegedly involved in the murder of Tayskii, a key figure in Taytown and a close friend of rapper Lil Durk. 2 Shields members are currently behind bars for Tayskii's murder. Despite rumors that 300 is wiping out Shields, the war between them is far from one-sided. Shields has taken out several Taytown members in retaliation. Another fierce rivalry is with MOB, another notorious Chicago gang. It is widely rumored that Shields is allegedly responsible for the death of MOB Scrap, a well-known figure in Chicago's drill scene. Scrap was infamous for beefing with particularly the Black Disciples. His death only fueled the ongoing conflict between Shields and their rivals. On the evening of July 6, 2011, Tayskii was among a crowd on the 6100 block of South Normal when violence erupted. According to prosecutors, Onwan Reynolds, a 28-year-old from the 5600 block of South Shields, was a passenger in a gold Cadillac that pulled up to the scene. Armed with an assault rifle, Reynolds opened fire on the crowd, while the driver of the vehicle allegedly used a handgun to join in the attack. The hail of bullets tragically ended Tayskii's life and left a 15-year-old boy wounded, shot 3 times in the leg. Eyewitnesses at the scene identified Reynolds as the gunman who wielded the assault rifle, leading to his arrest and subsequent charge of first-degree murder. But Reynolds wasn't the only one implicated in this senseless act of violence. A month later, another man, Marlon Boyce, 27, was also charged with first-degree murder for his role in the shooting. Despite being rushed to Stroger Hospital, Tayskii succumbed to his injuries, leaving a void in the lives of those who knew and loved him. This shooting is closely linked to the ongoing rivalry between the Shields gang and Taytown, with OTFD, a close affiliate of Lil Durk and a known Taytown Black Disciple member, allegedly involved in the case. Deed, who has a reputation in the streets, recently managed to beat the charges related to this incident, further fueling tensions between the rival factions. A fatal shooting involving Travis Henry, a member of the Shields gang, who was gunned down in a brutal attack. Travis Henry, known for his ties to the Shield set, was targeted in what appears to be a planned hit with strong ties to the ongoing street conflicts in the city. The incident occurred as Henry sat in his vehicle with a witness when a blue van pulled up alongside them. According to the witness, the van was occupied by 4 men, all African American. Without warning, one of the men exited the van, produced a handgun, and began firing multiple shots into Henry's vehicle. In a desperate attempt to escape, the witness tried to back the car away but ended up crashing into a parked car and a fence. The gunman and his accomplices fled the scene, speeding southbound on Shields Avenue in the blue van. When officers arrived, they found Travis Henry slumped over in the passenger seat, showing no signs of life. The crime lab was immediately called to the scene as the investigation kicked into high gear. Nino, a member of the Micky Cobras from 057 Shields, who is now serving 25 years in prison for the 2014 murder of Willy, a known member of Taytown. The tragic incident took place on a Sunday afternoon in the Englewood neighborhood on the south side. DeMarco Lyons, also known as Willy, was just 22 years old when he was gunned down. Lyons was walking on the sidewalk in the 300 block of West 60th Place around 2:45 p.m. when an unknown man approached him and shot him once in the chest. The shooter fled the scene in a gray 4-door vehicle, leaving Lyons to die at the scene. Authorities later identified Lyons as a parolee with gang affiliations. The case took a turn when Nevada Hicks, an 18-year-old high school student from the South Side, was charged with first-degree murder in connection with Lyons' death. Witnesses identified Hicks as the gunman, and he allegedly admitted to others that he had committed the crime. Despite his young age, Hicks had a prior record, having pleaded guilty to a juvenile battery case in 2011. After more than 2 years, Hicks, who was 20 by the time of his sentencing, pleaded guilty to the murder of Lyons. Judge Lawrence Flood sentenced him to 25 years in prison, with credit for the 780 days he had already served in the Cook County Jail. The sentencing marked the end of a tragic chapter in the ongoing cycle of violence that plagues neighborhoods like Englewood. A CTA bus became the scene of a deadly shooting in the early hours of Monday morning. As the #29 State Street bus was traveling southbound near 34th Street in the Bronzeville neighborhood, a violent altercation broke out between passengers. It was just after midnight when things took a deadly turn. According to reports, one of the passengers pulled out a gun and opened fire on another, striking a man in his late 20s in the chest. The victim was rushed to the hospital but, tragically, did not survive. The bus driver, who was simply doing his job, was also caught in the crossfire, suffering a gunshot wound to the shoulder. Fortunately, he's expected to recover after undergoing surgery. The shooter fled the scene on foot after the bus crashed into a curb, leaving behind a shaken community and a scene marked only by tire tracks and a knocked-over street post. At around 12:20 a.m., a 30-year-old man, identified as Deshaun Jacobs, and a 21-year-old woman were standing on the sidewalk in the 5900 block of South Peoria Street when a dark-colored SUV drove by him. Shots were fired. Deshaun Jacobs, who was struck in the neck, was rushed to the University of Chicago Medical Center, but sadly succumbed to his injuries later that morning. Jacobs was a resident of the Englewood neighborhood, a community that has been deeply impacted by this senseless act of violence. The woman, who was also hit, sustained a gunshot wound to her right leg. She was taken to the same hospital, where her condition was stabilized. Today, we're covering the tragic death of Damonte Glover, also known as Bubbles 057 Shields, who was fatally shot in a drive-by on February 2nd in Chicago's New City neighborhood. 2 men, 31-year-old Terrence McNutt and 18-year-old Jalen Smith, have been charged with first-degree murder in connection with the shooting. Surveillance footage shows the 2 men at a nearby mobile gas station shortly before the attack. Glover, just 21 years old, walked past their vehicle at the station, unaware of what was about to happen. Moments later, McNutt circled the block, and as Glover walked away from the gas station, the Dodge pulled up behind him on West Garfield Boulevard. A witness saw an arm in an orange jacket extend from the car's window, firing multiple shots. Glover was struck several times and later pronounced dead at the University of Chicago Medical Center. McNutt, who was on parole at the time, was arrested with multiple weapons in his possession. Smith was taken into custody the following day. Both men reportedly identified themselves in stills from the surveillance footage. On the evening of Thursday, September 14, 2023, Chicago police responded to a ShotSpotter alert and multiple 911 calls reporting a shooting at 69th and Justine. When officers arrived, they found Willy lying on the sidewalk with gunshot wounds to his abdomen and leg. Willy was immediately rushed to the University of Chicago Hospital, but despite the best efforts of medical staff, he was pronounced dead shortly after. According to police, Willy had been riding an electric scooter when an unknown assailant approached him on foot and opened fire. The shooter then fled the scene, running eastbound down an alley. Today, we bring you a tragic story from Chicago's southwest side, where a young man was found brutally beaten to death in his own home. On Wednesday afternoon, 21-year-old Trevon Moore was discovered unresponsive in his residence on the 4900 block of South Maplewood Avenue. Chicago police and the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office have confirmed the identity of the victim as Trevon Moore. Around 1:58 p.m., a family member made the horrifying discovery, finding Trevon with severe blunt force trauma to the head. Sadly, he was pronounced dead at the scene. This senseless act of violence has left the family and community in mourning as authorities continue to investigate the circumstances surrounding Trevon Moore's tragic death. Our thoughts are with his loved ones during this incredibly difficult time. Today, we're covering the tragic death of Shaquille Bryant, also known as Shaq 057 Shields, who lost his life after a brutal shooting in Chicago's Woodlawn neighborhood. On Monday evening, around 6 p.m., 31-year-old Shaquille Bryant was standing on the sidewalk when two individuals exited a black SUV and opened fire. The attack left Bryant critically injured, and he was rushed to the University of Chicago Medical Center. Despite the efforts of medical staff, Bryant tragically succumbed to his injuries a few days later, being pronounced dead at 12:58 p.m. on Thursday. His death marks another heartbreaking loss in a city grappling with relentless gun violence. As we conclude today's episode, it's clear that the cycle of violence in Chicago's gang-ridden neighborhoods has left an indelible mark on the community. The tragic deaths of figures like Tayskii and Deshaun Jacobs, and the incarceration of individuals like Nino and OTFD, serve as stark reminders of the human cost of these ongoing conflicts. While law enforcement continues its efforts to bring justice to those affected, the deeper issue remains how to break the cycle of violence and bring peace to these streets. As the stories we've shared today reveal, the impact of gang rivalries extends far beyond the individuals involved, affecting entire communities and leaving a legacy of pain and loss.